The morning alarm sounded across the Galactic Council station as it did every day. Admiral Kexter walked through the metal halls, his forearms carrying data pads filled with reports from across the galaxy. The station was huge, bigger than most moons, and it housed representatives from over 3,000 different species. Everything seemed normal that day. Ships came and went from the docking bays. Diplomats argued about trade routes and border disputes. The daily business of keeping peace among the stars continued as usual. Then the silence began. Communications operator Velinara noticed it first. She was a Deshan, with pale blue skin and eyes that could see different types of light. Her job was to monitor all the radio signals coming from member worlds. She watched thousands of channels at once, making sure no planet was in trouble. "That's strange," she said to herself, looking at her screens. The Sol system had gone completely quiet. No messages from Earth, no signals from their space stations, no chatter from their ships flying between planets. At first, she thought it was just equipment failure. Human technology was still primitive compared to most species in the galaxy. They had only joined the Council 43 years ago, and their machines broke down often. But when she tried to contact Earth directly, nothing happened. The signals went out, but no one answered back. It was like the entire human civilization had simply vanished. Velinara called her supervisor, Director Thane. He was an old Corvan with gray fur and wise eyes who had worked in communications for over 200 years. "Sir, we have lost all contact with the Sol system," she reported. Director Thane frowned. "All contact? That seems unlikely. Try the emergency frequencies." Velinara tried everything. Emergency channels, military frequencies, even the simple radio waves that humans used for entertainment. Nothing. The Sol system was completely silent. Within hours, the news reached Admiral Kexter. He immediately sent scout ships to investigate. The journey to Earth took 3 days, even with the fastest ships the Council had. When the scouts arrived at Sol system, they found hard. Earth was gone. Not destroyed in the usual sense, but burned clean. The planet's surface glowed with radiation that would kill most life forms instantly. The oceans had boiled away. The atmosphere was poisoned. Mars looked even worse. The human colonies there were nothing but melted metal and glass. The orbital stations around both planets were shattered pieces floating in space. Jupiter's moons, where humans had built mining operations, were empty. Every structure was destroyed. Every person was gone. Scout Captain Araldin sent his report back to the Council station with shaking hands. His species, the Altarians, were known for being calm in any situation. But what he saw in the Sol system made him afraid. "Complete destruction of human presence," his message read. "No survivors detected. Radiation levels suggest massive nuclear bombardment. Unknown if any evacuation occurred. Investigating possible causes." The Council emergency session was called immediately. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the great meeting chamber. The room was designed to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes. Some breathed different gases, so they sat in special containers. Others needed different gravity, so they floated in energy fields. Admiral Kexter presented the scout reports to the assembly. Images of the dead Earth appeared on the giant screens around the room. Many representatives made sounds of sadness or shock in their own languages. Who would do such a thing? Asked Councillor Murthek of the Balarian Union. Her people were peaceful traders who had never known war. Before anyone could answer, High Commander Zephyron of the Zephyrian Hegemony stood up. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected light. His people were one of the oldest species in the Council, and they had great influence. The Zephyrian fleet carried out this action, he announced calmly. It was necessary for galactic security. The chamber erupted in noise. Thousands of voices speaking hundreds of languages all at once. Some species shouted in anger. Others whispered in fear. Admiral Kexter called for order. When the room became quiet again, he spoke directly to High Commander Zephron. "Explain yourself." The humans were council members. They were under our protection. Zephron walked to the center of the chamber. His movements were smooth and confident. He had planned this moment carefully. "The humans were dangerous," he said. "Our intelligence showed they were developing weapons beyond their stated capabilities. They were also expanding too quickly into sectors that belonged to other species." He activated a holographic display that showed human expansion over the past 20 years. Red dots marked human colonies and outposts. The pattern did look aggressive to species who did not understand human nature. Furthermore, Zephron continued, human behavior patterns indicated they would eventually become a threat to galactic stability. Their history shows constant warfare among themselves. They think differently than civilized species. Councillor Wextar of the Drachnary Republic spoke up. His people were warriors themselves, but they valued honor above all else. "This is murder of an entire species. Where is the honor in killing billions of innocents?" "There are no innocents among a species bred for violence," Zephron replied coldly. "We acted to prevent future galactic war. The humans would have brought chaos to our peaceful galaxy within 50 years. The debate continued for hours. Some species agreed with the Zephyrians. They had always been nervous about human expansion and human technology. Humans build weapons first and ask questions later. They settle planets without asking permission from nearby species. Other species were horrified by the genocide. But they were also afraid. If the Zephyrians could destroy Earth so completely, what could they do to other worlds? In the end, the Council voted to censure the Zephyrian hegemony for acting without permission. But no real punishment was given. The Zephyrians were too powerful, and what was done could not be undone. A moment of silence was observed for the dead human race. Then the Council moved on to other business, as it always did. But High Commander Zephron felt something strange as he returned to his ship. A feeling he had never experienced before. It was as if something was watching him from the dark spaces between stars. He dismissed the feeling. The humans were gone. Earth was dead. The threat was ended. He had no way of knowing that somewhere in the cold void beyond Pluto, millions of human eyes were watching. And they were very, very angry. 6 months after Earth fell silent, something began hunting in the dark. Lieutenant Caswell was on duty at Monitoring Station Helix when the first report came in. He was a young Zephyrian, fresh from the military academy, assigned to watch the quiet border regions where nothing ever happened. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a distress signal from Outpost Gamma 7. Caswell looked at his displays. Gamma 7 was a small mining station on the edge of Zephyrian space. 23 personnel worked there, pulling rare metals from dead asteroids. "Put it through," he ordered. The signal was broken and filled with static. Through the noise, they could hear Commander Valthek shouting, "Under attack. Unknown. Ships, they came from nowhere. Weapons like nothing we've seen. They're tearing us apart. Please send help." Then, silence. Caswell tried to contact the outpost again, but there was no answer. He sent the nearest patrol ship to investigate. What they found made no sense. Outpost Gamma 7 was completely gone. Not destroyed by explosions or fire. It had been cut apart piece by piece with perfect precision. The metal showed strange marks, as if it had been dissolved rather than blown up. All 23 crew members were missing. No bodies, no escape pods, no trace of what happened to them. The attackers had taken nothing of value. They had simply erased the outpost from existence and vanished. "Pirates don't work like this," said Captain Mordek, who led the investigation team. He was an experienced officer who had seen many raids and attacks. Pirates take things. They don't waste time cutting up empty stations. Over the next few weeks, more reports came in. Another outpost went silent. Then a supply convoy disappeared between star systems. A patrol ship stopped responding to calls and was found drifting empty in space. Each attack was the same. Perfect surgical destruction with no survivors and no witnesses. The attackers took nothing and left no clues except for the strange weapon marks that seemed to erase matter instead of breaking it. Hi, Commander Zephyron was worried, but not yet afraid. The Zephyrian military was the strongest in the galaxy. A few lost outposts meant nothing against their vast fleets. Increase patrols in the affected sectors, he ordered. These raiders will make a mistake eventually. When they do, we'll capture them and learn who sent them. But the attacks did not stop. They grew bolder. A week later, Strike Base Meridian was hit. This was not a small outpost, but a real military installation with shields, weapons, and a full garrison of 300 soldiers. Security Officer Yenthara was reviewing patrol reports when the attack began. She was sitting in the command center, surrounded by screens showing the space around the base. Contact on long-range sensors, reported Sensor Technician Kelmer. Unknown ship approaching from the asteroid field. Just one ship? Yenthara asked. That seemed strange. Strike Base Meridian could fight off a dozen enemy vessels. Confirmed. Single contact, but... Kelmer paused, checking his instruments again. Sir, the readings don't make sense. The ship's energy signature is off the scale. On the main screen, they could see a dark shape moving between the asteroids. It was roughly triangular, but its edges seemed to bend light in strange ways. The ship looked like a piece of space itself had come alive. All hands to battle stations, Yenthara ordered. Raise shields. Charge weapons. The unknown ship did not respond to hails or warnings. It simply continued toward the base at impossible speed. No normal ship could accelerate that quickly without crushing its crew. Firing main batteries, announced Weapons Officer Trelka. The base's heavy energy cannons opened fire. These were weapons that could crack apart small moons. The bolts of energy raced toward the unknown ship and passed right through it. What? Trelka stared at his controls in confusion. Direct hit, but no damage detected. It's like we're firing at empty space. The enemy ship fired back. What came from its weapons was not energy beams or missiles. It was something that made reality twist and fold. Where the attack hit the base's shields, the energy barrier simply stopped existing. Shields down, shouted multiple officers at once. The second shot hit the base itself. A section of the outer hull vanished as if it had never been built. Not torn away or melted. Simply gone. Evacuate the station, Yenthara ordered. All personnel to escape pods. But when the garrison tried to reach the landing bays, they found their path blocked. The enemy ship had somehow gotten inside the base. Dark figures in strange armor moved through the corridors, but they did not look like any species in Council records. The figures moved too quickly for normal eyes to follow. They carried weapons that fired beams of absolute darkness. When the beams touched Zephyrian soldiers, the soldiers collapsed instantly. Not dead, but unconscious and breathing. Within 30 minutes, Strike Base Meridian was captured. The dark ship departed as quickly as it had arrived, taking all 300 garrison members with it. When rescue ships arrived 6 hours later, they found the base intact but empty. The attackers had been careful not to damage the structure itself. They only wanted the people. Admiral Kexter of the Galactic Council received the report with growing concern. These were not random attacks by unknown raiders. Someone was specifically targeting Zephyrian installations and personnel. The attack pattern showed detailed knowledge of Zephyrian military procedures, he told the emergency council session. The attackers know exactly when and where to strike for maximum effect. High Commander Zephyron was no longer dismissive. 3 months of attacks had cost him over 2,000 personnel and dozens of installations. His military commanders were starting to show fear. "We need to find out who is behind this," he declared. "No species in the galaxy has technology capable of these attacks. The ships phase through solid matter. The weapons erase targets from existence. This is beyond anything in our databases." Councilor Wextar of the Draknari Republic spoke carefully. Could these attackers be connected to the human extinction? The timing seemed suspicious. "Impossible," Zephyron replied quickly. "We confirmed the destruction of all human colonies and ships. Earth itself is a dead rock. There are no humans left." But privately, Zephyron was beginning to have doubts. The attackers showed a level of hatred and precision that suggested personal revenge rather than simple raiding. They took prisoners instead of killing, as if they wanted information. And they targeted only Zephyrian assets, avoiding areas where other species might be harmed. 3 weeks later, the doubt became certainty. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures in the space between star systems. The readings showed industrial activity on a scale that should have been impossible to hide. Entire fleets were being built in the deep void. Where no planets existed, scout ships sent to investigate never returned. On the edge of council space, listening posts began picking up strange transmissions. The signals were encrypted in a way that council computers could not break. But the mathematical patterns were familiar. They matched the old human communication protocols. Director Thane was the first to make the connection. He had worked with human diplomats for decades and remembered their encoding methods. "Admiral," he reported to Kexter, "I believe the signals are of human origin. But that should be impossible." "Unless it isn't," Kexter said grimly. "What if the Zephyrians were wrong? What if some humans survived?" Deep in the void between stars, construction continued. Massive ships took shape in zero gravity, built from materials that had once been planets and asteroids. The ships were dark, angular things that bent light around themselves. And inside those ships, beings that had once been human planned their next moves with cold mathematical precision. The hunt was only beginning. The truth came from a dying ship. Battlecruiser Nexus Prime was the pride of the Zephyrian fleet. It carried a crew of 8,000 and enough firepower to level a planet. High Commander Zephyron had sent it to investigate the mysterious energy signatures. Detected in deep space. What the Nexus Prime found was beyond their worst nightmares. "Fleet. Contact dead ahead," reported Sensor Officer Mektar. His voice shook as he read the displays. Multiple ships. Massive energy readings. Captain Velther ordered the main screen to show what lay before them. The bridge crew fell silent. Hundreds of ships waited in the void. Each one was larger than the Nexus Prime, built from dark metal that seemed to absorb light itself. The vessels had no markings, no identification, and their design matched nothing in Council databases. "Open communications," Captain Velther ordered. "Unknown fleet, identify yourselves. You are in violation of Council space." The response came immediately. Not words, but a transmission that made every Zephyrian on the bridge feel suddenly cold. "We know you," said a voice that sounded human but wrong somehow. Too calm, too controlled, as if emotion had been surgically removed. "High Commander Zephyron of the Zephyrian hegemony. The one who burned our world." Captain Velther's blood turned to ice. "Impossible. Humans are extinct. We destroyed Earth." "Earth is gone," the voice agreed. "But we are not Earth anymore. We are what Earth became when you murdered our families." The unknown fleet began to move. The ships flowed through space like liquid metal, changing formation with perfect coordination. It was as if they were controlled by a single mind. "Battle stations," Captain Velther shouted. "All weapons target the lead ship." The Nexus Prime opened fire with everything it had. Energy cannons, missile batteries, plasma torpedoes. Enough destructive power to shatter an asteroid. The attacks simply vanished before reaching their targets. The enemy ships had shields that erased incoming fire from existence. Then the humans fired back. What hit the Nexus Prime was not a weapon in any normal sense. It was a beam of pure entropy that made matter forget how to exist. Where it touched the battlecruiser's hull, armor plating 20 meters thick simply stopped being real. "Hull breach on decks 15 through 20, shouted the damage control officer. "No, wait. The decks aren't damaged. They're just gone." More beams struck the ship. Whole sections vanished, leaving perfectly smooth holes that showed the space beyond. But somehow the ship's atmosphere did not escape. The holes were sealed by force fields that bent physics in impossible ways. "Engines offline," reported the engineering officer. "Weapons offline. We're dead in space." A new voice came over the communications, different from the first, but equally cold. "Zephyrian vessel, prepare to be boarded. Your crew will not be harmed if you surrender immediately." Captain Velther looked around his bridge. Half his ship was gone, his weapons were useless, and his engines were destroyed. He had no choice. "All hands, stand down. Do not resist the boarding party." The human ships moved alongside the crippled battlecruiser. Metal tentacles extended from their hulls and cut through the Nexus Prime's armor like it was paper. Boarding tubes connected the vessels. What came through those tubes made the Zephyrian crew forget how to breathe. The beings looked human in basic shape. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But they had been changed in ways that hurt to see. They moved with inhuman speed and grace. Their eyes glowed with inner light. Their skin showed patterns of circuitry that pulsed with energy. Most terrifying was their complete calm. They walked through the ship like they owned it, checking each compartment, cataloging everything. They showed no anger, no hatred, no emotion at all. Just cold efficiency. One of them approached Captain Velther. When it spoke, its voice was perfectly human, but carried harmonics that no human throat should make. "I am Designation 7 of the Soul Collective. You will provide information about Zephyrian military operations." "I will tell you nothing," Velther said, trying to sound brave. "You will," 7 said calmly. "We do not torture. We simply adjust your brain chemistry until cooperation becomes preferable to resistance. Your personality will remain intact. You will simply want to help us." Captain Velther felt something touch his mind. Not painful, but wrong in ways he could not describe. Suddenly, he wanted very much to answer any questions these beings might ask. "How did you survive?" He heard himself saying. "We destroyed everything. Every human world, every ship, every station." 7's expression did not change. "You destroyed decoys. While your fleets bombarded empty planets and fake installations, our species was already evacuating to generation ships hidden beyond your sensor range. That's impossible. We would have detected such a massive operation. You detected what we wanted you to detect. Humans are skilled at deception when survival is at stake." 7 gestured to the other modified humans moving through the ship. "During the 18 months before your attack, we also made contact with the Builders." Velther's eyes widened. Every species in the galaxy knew stories about the Builders, an ancient race that had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind technology that made Council science look primitive. "The Builders are myth," he whispered. "Their bodies are gone," 7 agreed. "But their automated systems remain. waiting for a species desperate enough to pay their price. We paid willingly. What price? Our humanity. Seven's glowing eyes showed no sadness at this admission. We traded our emotions, our individual dreams, our chaotic nature for the tools we needed to survive. The builder's machines rebuilt us into something that could not be destroyed by conventional means. Through the ship's communication system, other modified humans were downloading every piece of data the Nexus Prime contained. Military codes, fleet positions, defensive plans, personnel records, everything. We know about your species now, Seven continued. Your weaknesses, your fears, your tactical doctrines. We have studied you for months while you wondered who was hunting your people. What do you want? Captain Velther asked. Justice. Your species murdered 5 billion innocents because you were afraid of what we might become. Now we will show you what we actually became. Seven paused, as if accessing some internal database. Your High Commander will face trial for genocide. Your military will be disbanded. Your people will learn to live under supervision until they prove they can be trusted. The Council will never allow this. The Council is irrelevant. We have moved beyond their authority. Seven turned to leave, then stopped. You will live, Captain. You and your crew will be returned to Zephyrian space to deliver a message. What message? That humanity is no longer extinct. That we remember what you did to our families. And that we are coming. The modified humans departed as quickly as they had arrived. Emergency power restored life support to the damaged ship, and the engines flickered back to life, just enough to limp home as the Nexus Prime crawled toward Zephyrian space. Its crew watched the human fleet through the viewports. The massive ships were already moving, spreading out across the galaxy with purpose and coordination that spoke of careful planning. Captain Velther sent his report to High Command with shaking hands. The humans were alive. They had been transformed into something beyond normal understanding. And they were angry. In the depths of space, the Soul Collective continued its preparations. Massive construction yards built more ships from the raw matter of asteroids and dead worlds. Weapons that manipulated the basic forces of reality were forged in zero-gravity foundries. The beings that had once been human felt no joy in their coming victory. They felt no satisfaction in their revenge. They had traded away such feelings for the tools they needed, but they remembered love. They remembered their dead children, their murdered families, their destroyed dreams. And that memory was enough to drive them forward with purpose that would not bend or break. The stars themselves would learn to fear what humanity had become. But first, the Zephyrians would pay for what they had done to what humanity had been. The storm broke over the galaxy like nothing in recorded history. High Commander Zephron stood in the command center of Fortress Prime, the most heavily defended military installation in Zephyrian space. Around him, tactical displays showed the approaching human fleet. What they showed made no sense. 50,000 contacts and rising, reported Fleet Coordinator Mexton. Her voice was steady, but her hand shook as she read the sensor data. They're coming from everywhere at once. The human ships materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. They appeared simultaneously across dozens of star systems, as if the entire operation was controlled by a single mind. Each ship was a masterpiece of impossible engineering. Dark, angular vessels that seemed to bend space around themselves. How many ships do they have? Zephron demanded. Unknown, sir. Our sensors can't get accurate readings. The ships phase in and out of normal space. One moment we count 100 vessels, the next moment there are thousands. Through the great windows of the command center, Zephron could see human ships appearing in the space around Fortress Prime. They moved like living things, flowing through the void with liquid grace. Their weapons charged with light that hurt to look at directly. All fleets, engage immediately, Zephyron ordered. Show them the power of the Zephyrian hegemony. The largest military fleet in galactic history opened fire. 3 million Zephyrian vessels unleashed everything they had. Energy weapons that could crack planets, missiles that moved at near light speed, gravity bombs that crushed space itself. The attacks reached the human ships and simply stopped existing. No damage to enemy fleet, reported Weapons Coordinator Vexal. Our weapons are having no effect whatsoever. Impossible, Zephyron snarled. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. Sir, called out Communications Officer Yelara. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. The voice that filled the command center was perfectly calm, as if discussing the weather instead of the destruction of a civilization. High Commander Zephyron, I am Designation Prime of the Soul Collective. You are guilty of genocide against the human species. Surrender now, and your people will be treated according to civilized standards. I will never surrender to you monsters, Zephyron replied. We are not monsters, Designation Prime said without emotion. We are what your actions made necessary. You chose to murder billions. We chose to become something that could respond appropriately. The human fleet opened fire. What came from their weapons was not energy or matter, but pure entropy given direction. Reality itself attacked the Zephyrian fleet. Ships did not explode or burn. They simply ceased to exist in organized form. Metal became gas. Energy became waste heat. Order became chaos. In 30 seconds, 3 million Zephyrian vessels became scattered atoms drifting in space. Fleet status report, Zephyron whispered. Fleet is gone, sir, Mexton reported, in shock. All ships destroyed. No survivors detected. How? Zephyron stared at the empty space where his armada had been moments before. How can they have such power? We told you, Designation Prime's voice continued calmly. We paid the price for tools that could not be overcome by force. Your weapons manipulate matter and energy. Ours manipulate the rules that govern matter and energy. Human ships began landing on Zephyrian worlds, not crashing or attacking, but settling down like metal birds coming to roost. They ignored defensive batteries and shield generators as if such things were children's toys. On the planet Zephdal Prime, General Korvax watched human soldiers march through the capital city. The beings moved in perfect formation, their enhanced bodies requiring no vehicles or support equipment. They carried weapons that looked like simple metal rods, but hummed with barely contained power. All units, engage the invaders. Korvax ordered. Zephyrian ground forces opened fire. The humans did not take cover or dodge. They simply walked through the weapons' fire as energy beams passed harmlessly around them. When they fired back, their rod weapons sent beams that made Zephyrian soldiers collapse instantly, alive but unconscious. They're not killing our people, observed Lieutenant Kexmar. Why aren't they killing us? Because we are not like you, said a voice behind them. They turned to find a modified human standing in their command bunker. It had somehow passed through solid walls without leaving a mark. Its glowing eyes showed no hatred, no anger, only cold purpose. I am Designation 12, it said. You will order all military forces to surrender immediately. Never, General Korvax snarled, drawing his sidearm. The weapon passed through the human like it was made of light. Designation 12 reached out and touched the general's forehead with one finger. Korvax collapsed, unconscious but breathing. Your species chose genocide, 12 said to the remaining officers. We choose justice. Your people will live, but under different rules. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on hundreds of worlds. Human forces appeared everywhere at once, overwhelming defenses that had been built to stop conventional invasions. They moved through shields and armor as if such protection did not exist. But they did not slaughter. They captured. They preserved. They documented everything. On Fortress Prime, High Commander Zephron watched his civilization being systematically dismantled. Human ships surrounded every planet, every station, every military installation. Nothing moved in Zephyrian space without their permission. "Sir," Communications Officer Yelar reported, "we're receiving transmissions from the outer colonies. The humans are evacuating our people." "What?" "They're moving entire populations to internment worlds. Everyone is being processed, cataloged, and relocated. But no one is being killed." Through the command center speakers, they could hear reports from across Zephyrian space. Cities emptied in perfect order. Military bases dismantled with surgical precision. Governments replaced by human administrators who spoke in the same emotionless tone. "Why are they keeping us alive?" asked Fleet Coordinator Mexthin. The answer came from Designation Prime. "Because we are not you," the voice said. "When we decided to respond to your genocide, we chose to be better than you were. Your people will live to see a different kind of civilization. You will learn that there are alternatives to murder." "You're enslaving us," Zephron accused. "We are teaching you. Your species chose to solve problems through extinction. We will show you other ways. Your children will grow up in a galaxy where genocide is impossible." Human ships began jamming all communication networks across the galaxy. The ancient systems that connected thousands of civilizations started going dark. For the first time in recorded history, species could not contact each other freely. "What are you doing to the galaxy?" Zephron demanded. "Creating silence," Designation Prime replied. "Your civilization existed in chaos. Thousands of species competing, fighting, threatening each other. We will replace chaos with order." On his personal display, Zephron watched human fleets spreading to every corner of known space. They were not conquering in the traditional sense. They were reorganizing. Ships appeared in every system, monitoring everything, controlling all movement and communication. "The Galactic Council will stop you," he said desperately. "The Galactic Council no longer exists. We have replaced it with something more efficient. Other species will fight you. Other species are learning the same lesson you are learning. That resistance is futile when your opponent controls the fundamental forces of reality." Through the great windows, Zephron could see human construction ships already at work. They were building something around Fortress Prime, a structure that would preserve the installation exactly as it was, but empty of life. "What is that?" he asked. "A monument," Designation Prime explained. "We are preserving your greatest military base as a reminder to future generations. It will show them what happens when a species chooses genocide over cooperation. You're turning us into a museum exhibit. We are turning your civilization into a lesson. Your cities, your monuments, your history, all preserved perfectly. But your people will live elsewhere, under supervision, until they prove they have learned from your mistakes." As the last Zephyrian resistance collapsed, High Commander Zephron finally understood what humanity had become. They had not simply gained power, they had gained perfect, terrible patience. They would not rest until every trace of the old galactic order was replaced with something that could never again choose extinction as a solution. The stars had learned a new kind of silence. Not the silence of death, but the silence of absolute control. And in that silence, humanity began building something the galaxy had never seen before, a peace enforced not by treaties or diplomacy, but by the simple impossibility of choosing war. The age of chaos was ending. The age of human oversight had begun. 5 years after the silence began, the galaxy learned to breathe differently. Former Admiral Kexter walked through the corridors of what had once been the Galactic Council Station. Now it served as the central administrative hub for the Sol Collective's management of galactic civilization. The walls still looked the same, but everything else had changed. Where once thousands of diplomats had argued and debated, now a few hundred beings worked in perfect, quiet efficiency. Most were humans, or what humans had become. They moved through the station like ghosts, their enhanced forms requiring neither rest nor food as they managed the affairs of 3,000 species. Kexter paused at a viewing window that looked out into space. Where once hundreds of ships from different species had docked in chaotic patterns, now perfect lines of identical vessels waited in ordered formation. Every ship was monitored. Every movement was tracked. Every passenger was catalogued. "You seem troubled, Admiral," said a familiar voice behind him. Kexter turned to see Designation Prime approaching. The being that had once commanded humanity's revenge now served as the primary administrator for galactic affairs. Its appearance had changed little in 5 years, still human in basic shape, but with skin that showed patterns of living circuitry and eyes that glowed with inner light. "I am no longer an admiral," Kexter replied. "That rank has no meaning under your system. You were given the position of regional coordinator for the Altarian sectors," Prime reminded him. "Your species values the honor." Honor. Kexter tasted the word like bitter medicine. "Is there honor in collaboration with conquerors?" "We are not conquerors," Prime said with the same calm tone it always used. "We are administrators. Your people live better now than they did under Council rule." This was true, and Kexter could not deny it. The Altarian worlds had never known such prosperity. Trade flowed smoothly between species because the humans managed every transaction. Conflicts between neighboring systems were resolved instantly because the humans controlled all communication. Crime was nearly extinct because the human surveillance network saw everything. "But we are not free," Kexter said. "Define freedom." Kexter gestured toward the ordered space traffic outside. "The freedom to make our own mistakes. The freedom to argue and fight and choose our own path, even if it leads to failure. Your species had that freedom for millions of years. You used it to create an endless cycle of war and suffering. The Zephyrians used it to commit genocide." Prime paused, accessing some internal database. "In the 5 years since the silence began, there have been 0 wars, 0 famicides, 0 famines, and 0 plagues. Crime rates have dropped by 99% across all species. Because you control everything. Because we prevent the choices that lead to suffering." They walked together through the station's main plaza. Beings from dozens of different species moved through the space, but there was no chaos, no arguments, no displays of cultural differences that might cause conflict. Everyone spoke quietly. Everyone followed the designated pathways. Everyone obeyed the rules. "What happened to the Zephyrians?" Kexter asked. He had not seen any of Zephyr-S's people in months. "They are being educated," Prime replied. 47 of their worlds have been converted into learning facilities. The population is studying alternative approaches to problem solving. They are making good progress. And High Commander Zephyron? He teaches classes on the consequences of genocide. His personal experiences provide valuable educational material for younger Zephyrians. Kexter shuddered. The idea of the proud High Commander being forced to educate his own people about his failures was somehow worse than simple execution would have been. They passed a communication center where hundreds of human operators managed information flow across the galaxy. Every message between species was monitored, filtered, and approved before transmission. News that might cause alarm was edited. Scientific discoveries that might lead to weapons development were classified. Cultural exchanges that might breed resentment were redirected. "You have created a galaxy of children," Kexter observed. "No species is allowed to make adult decisions. We have created a galaxy without the suffering that adult decisions caused, Prime corrected. Your species chose poorly for millions of years. We have removed the opportunity to choose poorly. And what about growth? What about progress? What about the struggles that make us stronger? Prime stopped walking and turned to face him directly. For a moment, something almost like sadness flickered in its glowing eyes. Growth is still possible. Progress continues under careful guidance. Strength can be developed through challenges we design to be educational rather than destructive. It paused. You mourn the loss of chaos. We mourn the 5 billion humans who died because chaos was allowed to flourish. They entered the former council chamber, where species representatives had once debated galactic policy. Now it served as a monitoring center where human operators watched real-time displays showing every inhabited world in the galaxy. The screen showed cities at peace, trade routes running smoothly, populations living in comfort and safety. There were no wars because the humans prevented the misunderstandings that led to wars. There were no famines because the humans managed resource distribution. There were no plagues because the humans monitored all biological threats. It is perfect, Kexler admitted reluctantly. But it is not alive. It is alive, Prime disagreed. It simply lives according to rules that prevent unnecessary death. What about exploration? Discovery? The unknown? Exploration continues under human guidance. New worlds are settled according to optimal population distribution models. Scientific research proceeds along approved pathways. The unknown is cataloged and made safe before contact is permitted. Kexter looked at the display showing countless worlds under human oversight. On every planet, human observers maintained perfect order. In every system, human ships ensured compliance with collective regulations. In every corner of the galaxy, the chaotic diversity that had once defined galactic civilization had been replaced with managed efficiency. How long will this continue? He asked. Until every species proves it can be trusted with the freedoms your generation abused, Prime replied. Perhaps 1,000 years. Perhaps 10,000. Time has little meaning to us now. And if some species never prove themselves worthy, then they will live comfortable, safe lives under permanent supervision. Their children will be raised with better values. Eventually, their descendants may earn the right to make their own choices. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from one of the monitoring stations. A human operator reported that long-range sensors had detected an unknown ship approaching from outside the galaxy. Possible contact with extragalactic civilization, the operator announced. Unknown technology signature. Shall we intercept? Prime considered for a moment. Dispatch a first contact team. Full diplomatic protocols. If they show signs of aggressive intent, implement containment procedures. Kexter watched the efficiency with which the humans responded to this new development. Within minutes, ships were dispatched, communication protocols were established, and contingency plans were activated. It was flawlessly organized, perfectly executed, and completely without the excitement that such discoveries had once generated. Do you ever miss it? He asked Prime. The uncertainty? The possibility of surprise. We remember what uncertainty cost us, Prime replied. Our families, our world, our future as a natural species. It gestured toward the peaceful displays. We chose certainty over chaos because chaos killed everything we loved. But at what cost? You are no longer human. We are what humanity became when faced with extinction. We are what your species made necessary. Prime's expression showed no regret, no sadness, only acceptance. We did not choose this transformation lightly. We chose it because the alternative was to let genocide succeed. As the day cycle ended, the station's lighting dimmed to simulate natural rhythms. Across the galaxy, billions of beings prepared for sleep under the watchful protection of their human guardians. They would wake to another day of peace, prosperity, and perfect order. The stars had learned their lesson. In the new silence, every species understood that humanity did not rule through fear or hatred, but through the simple application of overwhelming competence. They had made war impossible not by threatening destruction, but by making cooperation the only logical choice. The age of chaos was truly over. The age of managed peace would continue until every species learned what the humans had learned, that some choices were too dangerous to be left to chance and in the quiet spaces between stars. The beings that had once been human continued their eternal vigil, ensuring that what happened to Earth would never happen to anyone, anywhere, ever again, even if it meant the galaxy would never again know the terrible, beautiful freedom of making its own mistakes. The stars were quiet now. And in that silence, a new kind of civilization grew, one where love was expressed through absolute protection, and where the greatest act of mercy was removing the possibility of cruelty. It was not the future anyone had imagined, but it was the future that humanity's ashes had demanded, and the stars, in their new silence, learned to call it peace.